Hello, everybody. I'm Kim Scott, co-host of the Just Work podcast. And with me is the great...
So I'm her co-host, Wesley Faulkner, and we have Ron here. And Kim, could you introduce Ron?
Absolutely. Ron Carucci is... Am I saying your name right, Ron? I
You
want
are.
to double check.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. Ron Carucci is co-founder and managing partner at Navalent. Am I saying that right?
You
Navalent?
are. Two for
All
two.
right. I am doing well today. Working with CEOs and executives pursuing transformational change for their organizations, leaders, and industries. He has a 30-year track record helping executives tackle challenges of strategy, organization, and leadership. From startups to Fortune 10s, nonprofits to heads of state, turnarounds to new markets and strategies, overhauling leadership and culture to redesigning for growth. He has helped organizations articulate strategies that lead to accelerated growth and design organizations that can execute those strategies. He has worked in more than 25 countries on 4 continents. He is the author of 9 books. My gosh, I bow at, including the Amazon #1 Rising to Power and the recently released multi-award winning To Be Honest, Lead with the Power of Truth, Justice, and Purpose. He is a popular contributor to the Harvard Business Review, where Navalent's work on leadership was named one of 2016's management ideas that mattered most. He is also a regular contributor to Forbes and 3-time TEDx speaker, one of which on the topic of power has been viewed 1.3 million times. His work's been featured in Fortune, CEO Magazine, Inc., Business Insider, MSNBC, Business Week, Inc., Fast Company, Smart Business, and Thought Leaders. Welcome, Ron. That's quite a bio.
Well, thanks for reading all of it. That was very kind of you. Wesley and Kim, it's always a pleasure to be in your presence. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm excited for our conversation. What I'd love to do next, with your all's permission, is read just a couple of paragraphs from Radical Respect, which is the paperback version of Just Work that's coming out next May, and get your feedback on it. Create consequences for bullying. Unless leaders create real consequences for bullying, it does work for the bully at the expense of others on the team. As a leader, you have 3 levers at your disposal: conversational consequences, compensation consequences, and career consequences. Today, we're going to talk just about the first one, conversation consequences. Your first response to bullying should be to pull the bully aside and give clear feedback. They might say they were unaware they were crossing a line or simply deny it. Or they may argue some version of, I'm doing what I have to do to get results. If others can't take it, they should find a new place to work. Don't let them off the hook. Reiterate what you noticed and how it affects the team. Then explain that if the behavior continues, it will be noted in their performance review and may affect compensation and even their future at your company. If the person who engaged in bullying does it again, you must follow through with the consequences you outlined. It's equally important to follow up with the people who were bullied to understand how they experienced the situation and to let them know you have their back. All right, lay it on me. What do you all think?
Wesley, you want to hit it?
I was gonna say that the following through is so important. I was listening or reading a study. I think it was out of Canada, but they really looked at several different ways in which work situations can be unequal,
Mm-hmm.
and they said that it makes those who bully and those who kind of like dominate and don't get any consequences that they don't try as hard.
Yeah.
And people who get bullied, they also don't try as hard because since there's no consequences for being like a really bad employee, then there's no reason to try to be a really good employee.
Yeah.
And the opposite is true. And so it doesn't just hurt the people who don't get punished, or the people who have to experience the bullying. It hurts everyone. And so I totally agree that having a conversation, being upfront, but making sure you follow through is one of the biggest things that can make an impact here.
Yeah, absolutely. Ron?
Yeah,
Lay it on
so,
me.
one of the things I think that bullying is something that is so painfully misunderstood and underestimated in workplaces.
Yeah.
I actually did a bunch of research with someone with Ludmila Preslova for an HBR study on workplace bullying. And we
Mhm.
identified a taxonomy of 15 types of bullying and 8 types of domains that bullying takes place in to
Wow.
actually break down the nuances of this. Most of us think of this, the screamer, the stapler thrower, whatever,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
they exist, but they know how to hide.
Yep.
But bullying is much more nuanced, and it takes place in much more insidious ways. And so you have to know what you're looking for to recognize it. And I think um, you have to if you're hesitant to confront it, you have to ask yourself, what's the price I'm willing to tolerate here?
Yeah.
Uh, because most of us sort of go into bystander effect of thinking, well, everybody has a bad day,
Yeah.
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
they're just trying to get results,
Yeah. Or
whatever.
she
They're under a
didn't
lot of
mean any
pressure.
harm, or
They
he's a
didn't
good
mean, yeah,
guy.
they apologized. They sent flowers, like
Yeah.
most abusive husbands do. But you have to really calculate the long term cost of tolerating behavior that undermines the dignity of anybody in any way for any reason, even once. And you have to decide the cost tolerance is zero. Just it's zero. Period. End of story. Because once you give them, this is the classic case that if you give a moose a muffin, right? You give them an inch, it's it. You have given them carte blanche permission
What? Wait.
to.
What? Wait. Can we go back? What happens if you give a moose a muffin? I've never heard that before.
Don't you know that? Don't you know that kid story? Oh my
I
gosh!
don't.
If you give a moose a muffin, it's just one of those, and then they want this, and they want this, they
Yeah.
want this, they want
Okay.
this, they want this. And so it's one of those you can't. The unraveling never ends.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have got to make your intolerance completely clear.
Yeah. Or make the
Um,
consequences
and make the
completely.
consequences,
Yeah.
and I actually find that one of the best consequences of for bullying is shame. Is
Hmm.
is actual, and I know, and there's most psychologists would never ever say that shame,
Yeah,
and
I'm fascinated because I got a long lecture from a psychologist when I was writing this
which is
about
different
the
than guilt,
difference
right? So
between
guilting
shame
somebody
and
says,
guilt and yeah.
I actually think guilt doesn't work for bully from some bullies. For
Mhm.
some bullies are bully out of deep insecurity anyway, and so guilt does work.
Mhm.
Making them realize the destructive consequences of their choices. But sometimes shame, meaning public embarrassment,
Mhm.
um, a little bit of a taste of their own medicine.
Mhm.
Sometimes it can actually be very effective for somebody who's just that thick-skinned. Hmm.
Is
Yeah.
that what you're saying? Is that effectively with shame, if you're saying public embarrassment, is also like a cultural signal saying that this is not allowed?
It's a
Uh,
consequence in a way.
yeah,
Consequence.
and
Yeah.
when people get away with something, there are rules that are written, and of course, there's rules that are enforced. But when you observe which ones are bad things, which things are good things, you kind of understand what the real structure of what's being rewarded and what's being punished is, just from observation, which is kind of the default culture of the organization. And what you're saying is the shame is saying this is not tolerated. And that is actually a reinforcement of the culture in some way. Is that what you mean?
Well, I think it reinforces the culture you want, um,
Yes. Well,
and,
the culture that this is not allowed.
that we just this is not a good thing.
Mhm.
Now, it may not be the first lever you try and pull, but for some people who are manipulators, who are power grabbers, who use resources to manipulate. I mean, again, anytime, and you say this in your book, Kim, it's often a power differential that starts it. But anytime you take it, you exploit a power differential to get to indulge self interest or some other gain
Yeah.
at someone else's at the expense of someone's dignity.
Yeah.
Um, that's bullying.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to scream and yell at them in public or throw a stapler at their head
Yeah.
uh, for it
Yeah.
to be bullying.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to remember that very often for the person who's indulging in bullying, it does the reason why I said in the book it works for them is that it for whatever reason it helps them get the results that they're trying to get. But they don't bear the cost. There are negative externalities of bullying, right? So if somebody yells at someone else in a meeting, like, if I get really screamed at in a meeting, I am knocked off my game for the whole rest of the day. And then I bear the consequences of that, not the person who screamed at me. And so that, I think, is the cost that needs the bully needs it. The person who indulged in that behavior needs to bear that cost, not the person who was harmed by the behavior, and not the whole team. I mean, I got some feedback on, but very often people talk about that person on the team who gets results but leaves a trail of dead bodies in their wake.
Yeah.
Now that I've been working on my nonviolent language, so they leave a trail of harm in their wake. But I think that we've all worked with that person, I think.
Well, and one of the I'm grateful that I don't often have to work with executives who are that bad, but I do work with executives sometimes who don't understand how to use their power well, or
Mm-hmm.
who don't understand the consequences of their own results orientation, or their drivenness, or their own insecurities, and how those manifest. And one of the I start with the assumption that most people who are bullies actually don't intend to be bullies. They intend something else. And mostly it's to engineer a certain reaction, it's to self protect, it's some other need they believe they're meeting that they're actually not, right?
Yeah.
And so, one of the questions I love to ask clients that I work with after a moment that, maybe they're obtuse to say, tell me what you were trying to accomplish when you said the following in that meeting.
Yeah.
And they'll often like, well, what do you mean? I don't remember it. And I'll say, well, these are the words you used. This is how you said it. This is the tone you
Mm-hmm.
said it in. Tell me what you wanted to accomplish. And they already know that I'm onto something, right? Well, I was
Yeah.
just trying to make my point clear because I felt like they weren't
Yeah.
listening to me.
Yeah.
Okay. So you wanted to be heard. Yeah.
Yes.
Did you feel like you accomplished that? Well, you obviously think I wasn't. I said, I can tell you that not only were you not heard, what you told people was the following. And what you
Yeah.
told Susan was really
Yeah.
the following.
Yeah. Yeah.
And suddenly they're like, okay, when you put it that way. I'm like, no, that's not the way to put it. That's what happened.
That's what happened.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and usually you give them a minute and they'll go, okay, my script says your next line is I'm sorry. Go down
Yeah.
to Susan's office and apologize. Let
Yeah.
other people hear you do it. That what happened in there was not really what you wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
I think before you ask someone to apologize, it's a good idea to make sure they truly understand what they did
right,
Yeah.
wrong,
right.
Because
If it comes
what you
across as obligatory,
yeah,
it's just
Right.
I'm
disgusting.
sorry you felt that way,
Yeah,
is not
Yeah.
gonna
uh,
Or sorry I yelled it, but I still mean what I said.
yeah.
yeah.
Is another thing where they don't understand. It's not always just a
Or the
delivery.
classic.
Sometimes it is actually what
I'm
was
not
actually
sorry for
said.
what I said. I'm just sorry for how I said it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And actually, I mean, so I want to pause on that for a moment because sometimes that's not a bad thing to say.
Mm,
Like
sure.
sometimes I don't want to like and now I'm going to veer into radical candor talk, but there are times when I'm challenging directly, like I'm saying something, I believe something, but I said it in the worst possible way. In fact, I recently did this. It's so embarrassing that I did this, but I was in a major conflict with someone and I had talked to them a couple of times and they kept I kind of felt like they were bullying me. They kept like they were not listening. And so what I did was I wrote an extremely pointed and detailed and angry email and sent it to them and 30 of their colleagues.
Oh,
Why did I do that? It was so bad. So I was kind of responding to bullying with bullying and now I'm the jerk, And so I think it's but what I wish I had done is gone back and what I needed to do is say, "Look, I agree with everything I said, but I should not have sent it in an email and I definitely should not have sent it to 30 people. And I'm really sorry about that." But what I'm saying, we still need to talk about,
yeah.
you know.
Well, I think just the difference is I would say in what Ron was saying in terms of now, what did you mean? What did you do? It seems like that was all it was a breakdown, and what they
Yeah.
wanted to do did not accomplish that both in substance and delivery.
Yeah.
And so understanding that if it's one or the other, yes, apologize for one that you could have done wrong, but also I would like to just also emphasize that the power dynamic or imbalance matters a lot as well, And I'm
Mm.
not sure what your power dynamic was, Kim, but if someone is
I
in
was
a
less
leadership position,
powerful, to be fair
yes.
to me.
So if
That was
someone is more powerful than the person that they're speaking to, then I would say that it means that you have to have more care
yes.
rather.
Mhm.
Yes.
And so
Absolutely.
I can understand where you're coming from, Kim, but it's important, or it's incumbent on those in the leadership position to make sure that they are taking care of the people that report to them, knowing that the consequences for their speech is going to be greatly diminished than the consequences of those that are under their charge, I would say.
Yeah.
You know what's
Yeah.
really hard about that, Wesley? And it's part of the series of articles we did for HBR, and I put both links in the chat in case you want to include them in the page, was the whole phenomenon of upward bullying. And we did a whole separate piece just focused on that because most people don't assume bullying can happen upwardly, but it does.
Mm-hmm.
And when you
Yes.
have managers who are being bullied by those they lead, it often happens in conspiratorial group bullying. It's a
Yeah.
really insidious thing. And the person above you, especially when they're end running you and going to the person above you and leveraging your boss to bully you,
Mm-hmm.
it's a really disgusting phenomenon. But now the power differentials are really upside down. And the person that's being bullied often continues to forfeit the power that they have because they feel shame and guilt for not being able to control their people, and they don't want to look that way to their boss. And so sometimes the power differential isn't hierarchical in the way we think it is.
It's mobbing. I think Wesley and I
It's
did a
popping.
talk.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
we did an episode on that recently, and that is I think mobbing is easier also now thanks to social media and to all
Yeah.
these tools that we have, and so that's I think a really important point. I also think that leaders feel more vulnerable today for whatever reason than they have in the past. And now whether they should or they shouldn't, is an open debate. But I think some of the leaders I've worked with have felt that they've themselves been bullied because it is easier for people to mob
Sure.
than in the past. And the other thing about upward bullying is, I think, as an underrepresented leader, this
Mm.
can put you in a hard spot. So like I had this guy that worked for me who I was giving him some critical feedback on a project he was working on. And I said, what could I do or stop doing that would help help get this project back on track? He's like, I've told this story before, but you are the most aggressive woman. And so he's now using my gender to push back against my feedback. And that's tricky because on the one hand, I want to lay my power down and be open to his feedback. I don't want to use
Mm-hmm.
my power against him. And on the other hand, I want to let him know it's not okay to talk to any, woman at the company in that way. So, Wesley, I bet you have had some different experiences, but similar as a black man, uh, who's leading people, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Yes. Um, that's the hard thing, is that you have to be able to find the truth in that feedback.
Yes. Yeah, you gotta find
And
the negative truth.
I've dealt with this just recently, where sometimes people, in order to, when you have these huge opposing forces, being able to pull out the nuggets, making sure that they're heard, hopefully helps soften that aggression to the point where you can have a structured conversation about the things that do have substance. And then sometimes there's a reflection on, okay, well, yes, that was a little harsh. Um, what is the saying? People don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. And so
Yes.
you can as a leader, kind of on credit, give
Yeah.
out that care
Yeah.
on loan, and then hopefully it'll get paid back. But if someone is so caught up in this narrative in their head,
Mhm.
that the structure or this facade that they see, and calling that's to the nugget, and kind of like dehumanizing you in a way,
Yeah.
because they're so caught up in their persona of you, then those are really, really hard nuts to crack. But then I hear what you're saying, and it's extremely difficult to actually take the high road. But it is really important to draw those boundaries and those lines. But you don't have to do that right away. You can
Yeah.
still, there's still time to do
You can
that depending
pause.
on, you can pause. Uh,
Yeah.
and just like, is that what you really want to say right now? Is that the sentiment
Yeah.
that you want to come across? Is that the main feedback in this section that you want to give me? Is that the thing I should remember from this conversation?
Yeah.
Hopefully that lets them also take a pause and
Mm.
to get out of system one and move into system two and get into some
Yeah.
critical thinking.
Exactly. Or you can do some version of what we were talking about before, like you can look for the nugget of truth. Like, I agree that I can be impatient. However, my gender shouldn't factor into, you pushing back on the feedback.
Mhm.
So there may be a nugget of truth in there. And there's also, there, if you're separating the wheat from the chaff, there's a grain of truth, which is I can be impatient. And there's a whole lot of biased chaff, which we need to dispense with.
Yes.
All right, Ron, do you have a story for us that you're willing to share? We can use the
Yeah.
radical respect taxonomy: bias, prejudice, bullying, discrimination, harassment, or physical violation.
This story probably falls along a couple of those lines, but
Okay.
it was a big wake up call to me.
Okay.
Um, so I've been involved with the last 3.5 years with a group called White Men for Racial Justice. And it's
Mm-hmm.
a national community of men who come together to understand that people who look like us played a disproportionate role in unleveling the playing field.
Mm-hmm.
And we should play a disproportionate role in releveling it. Part of what got me noticing this was years before the group came together. I was living in Seattle at the time, and I was walking into my bank. We actually still went to banks.
Mm-hmm.
And a gentleman walked in before me, and there was one of those, lovely, retired for 20 years, greeter types there.
Yeah.
And I watched her greet this gentleman. She said, "Hi, welcome in. Do you have an account with us?" I thought it was a strange question, but he nodded, and so she gestured for him to go into the teller line. And I came right behind him and getting ready to qualify my visit. She said, "Hi, welcome in." And she gestured me to go in the teller line. I was like, why didn't I have to answer that question?
Answer that. Yeah.
And I looked ahead, and just this sickening feeling came over me as I realized that because his skin color was different than mine, he was asked that question. And I just had all these trigger, like I wanted to punch her,
Yeah.
but I would have killed her probably. I didn't understand. I didn't even understand why she would even do that. But I watched his head sink. And so I went up to him, I got behind him, and I just put my hand on his shoulder. And I said, "I am so sorry that happened." I think he was shocked that I noticed. But I had time to think about what am I going to do here?
Yeah.
But I let my anger get the better of me. I mean, I could have. But so anyway, after I finished my transaction, I went to the
Is she
manager.
dead? Did you hit her?
No, I don't think she's employed there anymore. I went
Oh,
to the
Oh,
wow.
manager. And in a better version of myself, could have explained the situation and compelled him to make sure that didn't happen again, and that she was obviously needed to be trained.
Yeah.
But that's not what I did. I shamed him for employing someone like that, that he would allow that to happen in his bank. And I told him that if I came in here again and she was still here, I would no longer be a customer. And I
Wow.
left. And of course, the whole time I'm going, do you not see the hypocrisy here? Do you not see the
Yeah.
hypocrisy here? You're being a hypocrite. But I just couldn't let it go.
Yeah.
Because I had really never. Well, this is probably not even true. I had never noticed that I'd seen it. I'm sure I'd seen it and just didn't have the eyes to recognize it. But the first time I'm actually seeing systemic racism right in front of me in my own town, and from a little old sweet lady, probably was somebody's great grandmother, and responded by taking a sledgehammer to kill a fly. And I have wrestled with that ever since. I'm now post that 5 years of my own work on my own understanding of my privilege and how my skin color and my gender have benefited from that, and um, living in a narrative of racial hierarchy that allows me to experience things I shouldn't, and privileges that I haven't earned. I think today I would handle that situation much differently. I hope, but it made a very sobering mark on me when it happened.
Yeah.
And
Wow. Thank you
the
for sharing that
irony of the
story.
power that she had,
Yeah.
and the lack of sheer awareness of how she was hurting somebody. The fact that she thought she was doing the right thing for the bank, didn't give it a thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just all came screaming into vision, in that moment.
This reminds me of some of the stories where, I mean, I have this. I'm sure everyone has this, where you can think about something that happened with an interaction between you and a parent, and it was devastating. Like, oh my God, do you remember that one time? And then the parent was like, I have no clue what you're talking about.
No memory.
Um, and and oh, you mean that thing? That was nothing. Or if they remember. And I wonder if that, for this older woman, if she, when she was let go, or when she found out, if she even knows what happened, if she learned, or if she regretted that choice, or did she just become more bitter about how things are and how the world has become so judgmental, and how she didn't do anything wrong. I'm really curious about
Mm.
the when people are in those areas where, once again, we talked about, like you mentioned, the apology. Do they really understand what they're apologizing for? When someone is being punished for their action, do they really understand what they're being punished for? And um, I guess we'll never know, but that's something that sticks in my mind, and that's what makes me think when I hear stories
It's a
like that
great
about.
question, Leslie. And
Yeah,
honestly, I have no idea. I never went back to follow up with the manager what he did. I'm not even sure he even confronted her. I fired them as my bank shortly after that because they were so incompetent anyway. Um, it was, I won't mention their name, but they were voted the worst company in America 3 years in a row.
Wow.
That's an honor that you have to work hard to get.
I
Uh,
heard of a bank that just opened accounts just in case you needed one. Uh,
and you didn't
I
even
wonder if
need
it's
it.
the same bank.
But it's what are the if we want to change the systems that continue to promote a narrative of racial hierarchy and privilege, and those are the ways they show up. How do you, unless you confront it in some way, even with a lot of love and grace, how do you help people see that this is in our pores? Like, it doesn't. I don't. Do I think for a minute she was a bigot and a horrible racist? Whatever. No, I don't think that at all. I think she probably would. Anybody that came to her house would probably get a nice cup of coffee and a cookie.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make it any better if that man still
Yeah,
felt really hurt. And I'm sure that man was probably had a lifetime of stories like that and was tired of having to justify anything he did. And
Yeah.
so,
And I think that I mean, it is so at some level enjoyable to find a person to blame, which is the problem with, I think, shaming and guilt. When often the problem is that this person was not trained, you know,
right.
and so but it's really not. It's not nearly as satisfying to go to the to the manager and say, I think you need to have better training for your greeters as it is to say, fire that person. This thing happened, and because it's so deeply ingrained in us to look for the bad person, look for the bad guy, who's the bad guy,
Yep.
who's the good guy. And the fact of the matter is, so much of what happens are the systems. I had a
Right.
similar situation. I was giving a talk with Trier Bryant, who I co-founded a company with, and I walked in, it was at a big conference, and I walked in, dressed. She dresses way better than I do. I walked in my jeans, my schlumpy jeans, and my, and no credentials. And someone came up to me, handed me a bottle of water, and said, "How can we help you?" And then she walked in right after me, looking like she belonged, at least in terms of her clothing. But it was a predominantly white conference, and they asked her for her credentials, and I was so angry, but I sent, because she and I talked about it, she said, don't blame the person, tell them they need to train people better. So luckily I had Trier to warn me to do the right thing, because I probably would have done what you did, Ron. And and I sent a very carefully worded email, and actually Trier looked at it, said, yeah, this is good, it stays
how many
focused on.
were on that email list?
I just sent it to the person who invited me.
And all 5,000 attendees.
Yeah. Yeah. I said, actually, I'm not going to put this on social media. We're not, like, but we want you to fix it. And the immediate response was, who was the person? And I said, you missed the point. But I also want to have some compassion for that person, because that is our instinctive go-to response, is who can I punish? And that's why creating systems that create consequences for people's sort of behavior is what will help us get out of this situation where bullying gets rewarded.
Yeah. I often think about that woman. I see her face to this day. I think about, her attempt to be sweet, and she was trying to greet people. And I think about, for the 70 something years of her life, how she was, what society trained her to be and think.
Yeah.
That led her to do that.
Yeah.
I'm sure unconsciously. And while I agree with the system part, Kim, I also think that if done in a kind way, she'd want to know.
Yeah.
The person that greeted you at the conference would want to know that they unintentionally did something harmful.
Or maybe they wouldn't. I mean, I don't want to always assume good intent, but yes, the vast majority of people would want to know so they can fix it.
And if they didn't fix it, we have a different problem now,
yeah,
right?
Yes, exactly.
But it's much more clear.
Yeah, and that's, I think, why it's so useful to distinguish between bias, prejudice, and bullying. So let's start by assuming these greeters were, what was going on was unconscious bias. And then if you train them properly and offer enough reminders, then they change their behavior. And also, if you set up a system where you give them a script and you tell everybody the same thing. Can I help you with your credentials? Or if you give one person a bottle of water, you give everybody a bottle of water, And so you set up the system so that they're less likely to do it. And then if someone does it anyway, and you give them feedback and they're like, but, they justify it, then you need not education, but consequences.
Right, exactly. But I think it's so interesting. We both had stories of responding to, bad behavior with worse behavior.
Yes, because
what does that say about our desire to be advocates?
Yeah. I think what the problem is, it's, at least for me, I'm not gonna, you can diagnose yourself, Ron, but I think the problem for me is that I was centering myself, and I, as a white person, felt ashamed that white people behave that way, and so I wanted to go punish someone as opposed to fixing the system.
And that's, that was
the
me.
problem.
That was it for me. I was angry, but it wasn't righteous anger. It was self-righteous anger.
Yeah. Yes.
And I didn't have the tools at the point to know how to regulate that and make a different choice.
Yeah. And so
there's a rush in justified anger, or appear to have justified anger, because then you can point it in a direction, let it go, and then feel like a relief. Like, I got it all out. I don't have to live with this. Mm-hmm. I don't have to deal with these emotions and these uncomfortable feelings. I can instead give it to someone else. Yeah. And so that is really addicting and really tempting. And it's really hard not to kind of fall for that bait of being able to participate in that way. Of just saying, you made me feel this way, so I'm going to make you or this other person or someone else that deserves this ire feel the same thing that I felt.
Yeah, I think that's the real risk of self-righteous shaming, is that now I'm in, my amygdala has hijacked my executive function. And then when I'm in that self-righteous shaming mode, I respond to bias with bullying, and that only makes the problem worse. It doesn't make it
better. And the worst thing to do, especially as a white person, is all you're doing is virtue signaling.
Yes.
You're just telling the world, look how much I care about people who are historically marginalized.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which,
have you ever had experience with white people like that, Wesley?
Yeah.
Oh, the last 40 minutes.
Think how many times this week?
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah.
Probably an unfair question, but yes, it happens, I think, far too often.
I think sometimes it's just hard. I mean, listen, when it comes to this stuff, white people are inherently dumb. We're just not that smart about this stuff. And so we never know what side of the line we're on. Even with good intentions, can often put ourselves on the wrong sides of those lines. And I often struggle, as I've done this work and learned a lot about where I fail, have wondered, is it better to just try, even if you step out on line the wrong way, or just hold back? There's never a right answer.
I think for me anyway, I could say that being othered doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Even if someone's trying to relate to your experience and just saying, I don't have to deal with this, it must be, I mean, being othered in that conversation with someone who you don't have that relationship feels uncomfortable. The part of it that is like, let's get past that part and you're having a conversation. The part of it is that when those conversations do happen, it's very important to understand that these aren't just things that happen. These are sometimes defining moments of one's life.
Yeah.
And when a casual conversation can really touch on some scarring, triggering topics. And so if one was to participate in that conversation, it's very important to understand that you could be really, really messing someone up mentally for a moment, for a while, by bringing up these emotions or these things. And so that's one of the things to keep in mind. If you have to have this level of, I guess, care, and you have to have this level of awareness that when you're talking to someone who's, let's just say in most cases, it could be victims of a crime.
Yeah.
Maybe not one reported or one that's talked about, but think of it from that perspective, that someone was abused or someone was attacked or someone was harmed, and that talking about this or bringing it up could be tapping into either those unresolved emotions or some of the self-blaming during those time periods.
It's so brilliantly said, Wesley. And the thing I want to punctuate that you said, it was your first prepositional phrase was with whom you have the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we so flippantly take for granted a level of intimacy with somebody that we don't have and haven't earned our right to have that conversation. And at the very least, ask permission to have it.
Yeah, because you want to make sure there's a follow-up. Let's say I'm just left in a puddle and I have some unresolved issues. I would love to be able to go back to the person. Now, if we're just in line at Starbucks and this comes up, that's not going to give an opportunity for me to be able to re-engage if I need to.
I think also it's useful though. I mean, at least when I am the person who's harmed by this behavior, I'll say what's useful for me, and then I'd be interested to hear what's useful for you all. But when I'm in a situation where someone has said or done something that is biased and sort of upsetting, it's really helpful to me if someone else comes up and says, "Gosh, I can't believe that just happened. That was weird," because it is weird. And if nobody says anything, I start to feel like, am I the only one who noticed that? It starts to feel like gaslighting. So I think my if if I were the person ahead of you in line at the bank, I would have appreciated you coming up and saying, "I'm so sorry that happened. That was weird." But you don't know how that person felt. It's probably was probably the right thing to do, but you just don't know. And that's so I try to err on the side of saying something rather than pretending that nothing happened.
Right.
But that's not 100% of the time the right thing to do.
My hope was that he would feel seen, that he would feel like, it wasn't a minor little 3-second moment for him, and that someone who looks like me noticed it and thought it was wrong. I was not going to make the moment go away, but
Yeah.
at least wanted him to feel like somebody cared enough to see
That
it
he wasn't alone. Yeah.
and
To notice
acknowledge
it.
that
Yeah.
was unacceptable. I was very conscious to make sure that he did not know I was going to the manager.
Yeah.
I didn't say, I'm going to go talk to the manager, because I didn't. That would be really condescending.
And you're putting on him the consequences that, yeah.
Right. So I waited till he left before I did that. It's funny when I think about the times I've been othered. So most people think for white men that shouldn't be much of an issue, but it actually is more. Most white men marginalize ourselves, right? Because we're racialized and genderized to not belong. We don't know how to. Belonging is not our gift. I actually have a piece coming out in Newsweek next week
You
that I
mean
really
you're
like
racialized to belong
to
or
not
to
belong,
not
to
what do you
control
mean
the belonging of others. But I think,
ah,
but not
like your belonging is assumed and therefore
well, but it's not based on actual belonging. It's not based on mutual co-creation of vulnerability or connection. It's
it's
based on
based on
control.
exclusion, the power to
Exactly.
exclude.
And most people think that, you know, inclusion is a byproduct of belonging, but the reality is that when white people invite people into an exclusive space, it doesn't feel inclusive. It feels like a favor. Um, and
Yes.
so I wrote a piece with a woman from UVA. It actually comes out in Newsweek next week, called "When White Men Learn How to Belong, They Become Better Allies." And it's based on these 3 years of watching these 400 men learn how to belong. But what I find when people try and other me, or when I've been othered for being a white man, um, I use humor. I actually go to this deflecting defensive mode rather than letting myself feel hurt. I actually make a joke. It's sort of my own defense mechanism. And I've noticed that over several years, that's my first go-to, is to sort of make light of it. And I've tried to figure out what is it, what am I telling myself that's doing as a disarming mechanism, or, you didn't hurt me. um,
It's
um,
it's like did you watch Nanette by Hannah Gadsby?
I didn't.
Very, very different. She is a gay woman, and she talks about this sort of horrible thing that happened to her, and how she told how she turned it into a joke and never told the second half of the story. And then in this, it's really powerful. But it's about a misuse of humor, which is to sort of distance yourself
Yeah.
from your own feelings and from yourself. It's like self alienation.
And I'm sure that's what I'm doing. I did it once in real time to it was pitching a client. Several firms were in this place. It was a large cosmetics company, and this woman from France, Gabrielle was her name, and she was sort of every vendor got 45 minutes to go into their pitch, and these two women had gone before me, and I was last. And she walked them in and out. She was warm. She was affable. They got coffee, whatever. She came out to me, and suddenly the temperature like dropped 40 degrees. Next. I'm like, I walk in, and it's like she's on her phone. She's not looking at me, and I'm like, and her two people on her team, I would feel awkward. I'm like, should I start? And it was, I mean, clearly something was different here. And
Wow.
so I did and we typically we don't do like 20 slides. It's like 3 slides, and then we just have a conversation. Like, how can we be helpful? And I knew that this was a pretty big deal for her. This project, politically rife with risk and big for her career. Anyway, so she was on her phone most of the time, wasn't even paying attention to what I was saying. At the end, she sort of, a couple of her colleagues asked some questions, and at the end, she said, "Look, let me just ask, why do you think you're the right consultant for this job?" And I'm like, I got a big choice to make here right now. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to. And I had all kinds of feelings of something had gone wrong. Somebody had just died. And who knows?
Yeah.
I said, well, honestly, Gabrielle, to be perfectly honest with you, given the way the last 20 minutes have gone, I'm not sure that I am. I can't help but notice the very large contrast between how you treated the last two consultants and how you treated me. I don't know what the reason for that is, but there has to be some reason for it. And so until I understand that, I'm not sure I can tell you that I am the right consultant for you. And
Wow.
got veins and whatever. And she said, okay, fine. You want me to be honest? I'll be honest. And then she sent her two people out of the room. I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. And she said, I asked for women consultants, and your firm told me they're going to send a woman. I'm like, which we didn't. She said, in my experience with white men, American consultants, I'm like, oh, there it is. Is that they're shysters.
We do have a reputation.
They come in and tell you what they want to hear, and it's a bait and switch. You'll come in and tell me everything I want to hear, and then some junior folks will come in here and do crappy work and just tell me what I want to hear. And I was like, well, first of all, I was shocked that she just was honest about it. No wonder she didn't say it in front of her people.
Yeah.
And I was shocked at my response. I paused for a minute, and then I literally burst out laughing.
Wow.
Like because it struck me as so funny. I said, Gabrielle, of all the things you could have said about me that would have been true and reasons to not hire me, worrying about what I'm going to say to you as not being truthful is not the thing anybody has ever worried about me. And so I'm sorry. Listen, I may never see you again, but for whatever it's worth, please, whoever you hire, and it's obviously not going to be me, please don't hire somebody that you feel comfortable with because of their gender or because of who they came from. Because this project you told me is rife with all kinds of political risk. Please hire somebody that's going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. But trust me when I tell you, there's nobody on this planet who has ever said about me, "Oh, he only tells you what you want to hear." We shook hands, she was cordial, and I left, assuming that that was done. But at least I felt like she got to experience who I really am,
Yeah.
not the concoction of me that she had in her head.
Yeah.
And I wasn't at that point sure I wanted to work anyway. But 2 weeks later, she called and said, "My team thinks I should hire you."
Wow.
And I was like, "I don't know that I think that, but let's keep talking."
And did you do it?
I did the work, and she turned out to be just very scared, a very scared woman for good reasons. It was a very it was a project that had a lot of political risk to it, and I wondered if she was being set up to fail. But yeah, I enjoyed her. She knows that I changed her name, but I tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very. I had never. I'm like, oh my god, there it is. I'm being othered right here in the room. And it's not even me. Like she's got made up some version of me in her head that
But
has nothing to do with me,
that's always the case
which
with
is always what
othering.
it is. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I do this to people all the time
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't
based
feel
on
good.
no data.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was a really great experience for me to go, wow, this is what it's like to have to do this. Now, the privilege I had was I could walk out and and say what I needed to say, and I was very aware of I could be really angry and defensive right now. I'm not going to help her. She could be someone who's really really hurt because she just got bad news, and I don't want to overly defer to her because I don't want to make this behavior okay. And so in real time, I was pouring sweat. My shirt is sopping wet. I look like
Yeah.
a pig, and I'm sure that was obvious to her. Um, and while I'm doing all this gymnastics in my head, the laughter was this. Literally like a guffaw was this
Yeah.
almost like this, like a sneeze, like this biological
Yeah.
involuntary response that I wasn't even expecting,
Yeah.
which of course just made her enraged.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Until I,
laughing. Yes.
until
My
I
thoughts.
explained why I was laughing, that I wasn't
Yeah.
laughing at her. I
Yeah.
was laughing at the preposterousness of what she was believing.
Yeah. And I think the difference, I mean, well, Wesley, I'll let you say what's coming. You look like you're having a lot of thought. So I'll let you talk first. And then,
Oh, I was just thinking before, like I use humor as well as a salve, or so a way to like kind of diffuse things. And I was wondering if it's like the mental equivalent of a power pose. You seen that? You
yeah.
stand with like the Woman pose just so you can gain confidence. I kind of say jokes to kind of make it less serious than how I feel it. And I wonder if it's the same way that you're trying to train your
Oh,
brain.
absolutely.
But I was just thinking about busting out laughing. It feels like, I know that's probably not good in all cases, but it also shows how uh, how preposterous it felt, to the point that that feels like that's the only response that really kind of just really puts an exclamation point of exactly how different it is from the form in that person's brain to how you see yourself, and that,
Yeah, and
and
I had
it was
already
a funhouse mirror.
formed a list of things she could have accused me of that I would have felt like,
Yeah,
yeah, she got me. It's true.
Yeah.
yeah,
I was waiting for those. And so when that came, I'm like, wait, you're not going to tell me that I'm, like too pushy, or
Yeah.
all the things that I would have said, yep, that's me, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm the wrong person. And I mean, long before that, but I mean, before I even walked in the room, I had realized, okay, I'm obviously going to get this job. And
Yeah.
so there was almost a little bit of a nothing to lose
Yeah.
Yeah,
at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
I just wanted to feel like I walked out of there feeling like I was at least a little bit true to myself, even if I wasn't a contender for the work. So
Yeah.
at
right.
least
Yes,
she could have gotten some truth out of it. I mean,
Yeah.
go figure.
Yeah,
yes,
and I think another thing to keep in mind is that about that story is that, like, if that had happened to you every day of your career, it would have been a lot harder to laugh.
Right.
That's
Absolutely.
what I was thinking
Absolutely.
as you were telling the
That's a
story.
great point.
Like I was in a situation where I had this boss who he bought everybody clothes. And I've had like throughout my career, I've had a lot of weird things happen about my my clothes, and people tell me to dress this way and that way. And but he did it to the men too. He also wanted to buy the men clothes. And this guy who I worked with was like, "Why is this such a big deal for you, Kim? I don't really care that much." And it was because it had never happened to him before. This
Mm.
somebody tried to buy him clothes, so he thought it was kind of funny. But meanwhile, it was like the fight that I could write a whole book about weird that, like Ted Sorensen, Kennedy's speechwriter, told me I dress like a prostitute. I'm like, and I was wearing a suit my mother had bought me at Ann Taylor. Like I was, I was objectively speaking, so like, and I can tell you 30 more stories like that. And that's why it was a big deal that my boss went out
Sure.
and had
Not to
tight
mention a
jeans
little bit
bought.
insulting.
Yeah, well, yes, it was weird.
Did he expect
Anyway.
people to actually wear them?
Oh,
He,
yes, he got mad at me when I didn't wear the tight jeans. Anyway. So I am now 8 minutes late for another meeting. So I want to thank you both so much for this conversation. I could keep talking for another 45 minutes. I really enjoyed it. But we'll wrap it up for today and more to come.
awesome.
Yes, thanks, Ron. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you so both for your work. Keep up the good work in the world. Thank you. Mm.
Thank you so much. And if folks have stories they want to share with us, send them to hello@justworktogether.com. Soon we'll have a new email address.